Hey, Ariel here for the Vallis channel. I hope you guys are all having a good day so far. Now this video is all of the obscure theory layers that I've done over the past year put into one uncut format, without the sponsored segments and the intros, as requested by many commenters. This is just the pure content. Special shout out to the Late Hours YouTube channel and Patrikios for helping edit the first two layers of this video. I hope you guys enjoy it, and without further ado, let's begin. The water car. The water fuel cell, also known as the car fueled by water, is a technical design created by American Stanley Meyer. Meyer claimed that an automobile retrofitted with the device could use water as fuel instead of gasoline, which is beyond revolutionary. In a news report on an Ohio TV station, Meyer demonstrated a dune buggy he claimed was powered by his water fuel cell. He stated that only 22 US gallons of water were required to travel from Los Angeles all the way to New York. Furthermore, Meyer claimed to have replaced the spark plugs with quote-unquote injectors that introduced a hydrogen/oxygen mixture into the engine cylinders. The tragic thing is that Stanley Meyer suddenly died on March 20th, 1998 while dining at a restaurant. His brother claimed that during a meeting with two Belgian investors in a restaurant, Meyer suddenly ran outside saying, quote-unquote, "They poisoned me." After an investigation, the Grove City Police went with the Franklin County coroner report that ruled that Meyer, who had high blood pressure, died of a cerebral aneurysm. Some of Meyer's supporters believe that he was assassinated by corporate powers or government agencies to suppress his inventions, also known as the free energy suppression theory, a conspiracy theory stating that technologically viable, pollution-free, no-cost energy sources are being suppressed to generate more revenue for corporate interest. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality is a theory of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Quantum immortality is a thought experiment that puts forth a scenario in which you as a person survive definite quantum suicide. So let's break that down into simpler terms. Let's say you get into a box with a gun pointed at your dome. Somehow the trigger measures the spin value of a proton every 2 seconds. If it spins one direction, it does nothing. If it spins the opposite direction, the trigger is pulled and you die. The proton gives you a definite 50% chance of living, making it as random as it could be. Now stay in that box until 200 seconds have gone by, the trigger being pulled 100 times. Your chances of random survival have now plummeted to 0.000%, reassuring that you are indeed immortal. Every time you could have died, the world split into two, one where you face your demise and the other where you lived. Either way, the only one that you would have experienced was the one in which you lived, where your consciousness was existing, because you can't know that you died since you've never experienced death, making you immortal in your reality, sort of. Statue of Lucifer. Many people believe that the Statue of Liberty in New York City represents Lucifer. This is because Lucifer in Latin means son of the morning, light bearer, or light bringer, as he who bears or shows the light. Spiritual knowledge can be referred to as light or enlightenment as well. This parallels Lady Liberty's characteristics, as she wears a crown shaped as the sun and holds a torch to illuminate the way. RFID chip. For a long time, many Christian evangelical preachers would claim that the RFID chip technology was either evil, satanic, part of the New World Order, or the most prominent is that it's the mark of the beast. If you don't know, this mark acts as the seal for the followers of the Antichrist and the false prophet. The false prophet, aka the second beast, is the one who causes people to take this evil mark, and the mark is supposed to be placed in the hand or forehead, though some Christians prophesied that the RFID chip would be the mark of the beast and that everyone would be forced to get it during a certain time period from 2012 to 2020. Nothing like that ever occurred. Hollow Earth. The hollow Earth is a concept proposing that the planet Earth is entirely hollow or contains a substantial interior space. It was still occasionally defended through the mid-19th century, notably by John Cleave Simmons Jr., but by this time it was part of popular pseudoscience and no longer a scientifically viable hypothesis, but it still has some believers to this day. What's inside of the hollow space? Well, it depends on who you ask. Some strongly believe that reptilian shapeshifters inhabit this space and that they're able to get above ground and control world governments, explaining why we get those creepy videos of politicians and celebrities with weird eye twitches. Others claim that there's an advanced human civilization living down there. One 18th century mathematician suggested that the entrances for the hollow Earth could be found at the North and South Pole. The United States controls the media. I'm gonna start off by reading this report from The Independent, stating, files we obtained mainly through the US Freedom of Information Act show that between 1911 and 2017, more than 800 featured films received support from the US government's Department of Defense, a significantly higher figure than previous estimates indicated. They funded movies like Transformers and Iron Man. This is almost not a theory anymore, but just a straight up fact. The US government does somewhat control what goes on in Hollywood. Not only that, they have also been revealed to have funded more than 1,100 television shows. It's insane that nobody talks about this either. This of course indicates that they pay for a certain public perception, always painting the US as the good guys, which is almost bordering on propaganda. Pipergate. In 2017, a strange and mysterious YouTube channel was created, going by the name Piper Rocks. She, or they, would go on to post videos that would enable a YouTube pedo ring. No older than 12 years old, she would post videos and revealing clothes and acting in strange scenarios. It was later found that the man behind the camera was a registered offender, though the rabbit hole goes deeper. This quote-unquote Piper girl was posting videos of different actresses, ranging from famous child celebrities to YouTube child stars. Nobody knew if quote-unquote Piper was the person she claimed to be, as she wouldn't reveal her voice, up until the In the Woods editing my video was uploaded, which was rather strange, as it sounded like a grown man using a voice changer to make himself sound like a little girl.
Hi guys, well I was editing some of my videos.
Masaru Emoto Water Theory. Masaru Emoto was a Japanese businessman, author, and pseudoscientist who claimed that the human consciousness could affect the molecular structure of water. His 2004 book, The Hidden Messages in Water, was a New York Times bestseller. His conjecture evolved over the years, and his early work revolved around pseudoscientific hypothesis that water could physically react to positive thoughts and words, and that polluted water could be cleaned through prayer and positive visualizations. Emoto said that the water was a blueprint for our reality, and that emotional energies and vibrations could change its physical structure. His water crystal experiments consisted of exposing water in glasses to various words, pictures, or music, then freezing it and examining the ice crystal aesthetic properties with microscopic photography. He claimed that the water exposed to positive speech and thoughts created visually pleasing ice crystals, and that negative intentions yielded quote-unquote ugly ice formations. Pentagon UFO videos, the Tic Tac. On November 14th, 2004, fighter pilot Commander David Fravor of the USS Nimitz claims to have investigated radar indications of a possible target off the coast of Southern California. Fravor said that the operator had told him that the USS Princeton, part of the strike group, had been tracking unusual aircraft for 2 weeks prior to the incident. The aircraft would appear at 80,000 feet before descending rapidly towards the sea and stopping at 20,000 feet, then hovering. Fravor reported that he saw an object, wide and oval, hovering above an ocean disturbance. He estimated that the object was about 40 feet long. Fravor and another pilot, Alex Dietrich, said in an interview that a total of 4 people, 2 pilots and 2 weapon system officers in the back seats of the 2 airplanes, witnessed the object for about 5 minutes. Fravor said that he spiraled down to get closer to the object, but the object descended, mirroring the trajectory of the airplane, until the object completely disappeared. A second wave of fighters, including pilot Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, took off from Nimitz to investigate. Unlike Fravor though, Underwood's fighter was equipped with an advanced infrared camera. Underwood recorded the FLIR video and coined the description Tic Tac to describe the infrared image. The video would later on be confirmed to be real by the Pentagon. Selling your soul. Surprisingly enough, selling your soul for fame and fortune isn't such a new idea. Rumors of musicians making deals with the devil have existed since the late 1700s. In one story, a man named Giuseppe Tartini dreamed that the devil appeared and offered him a deal for his soul. Supposedly, the devil played the most beautiful song on the violin, and when he woke up the next day, he wrote down the notes he had heard and created a classic. Fast forward to today, many people think that artists like Lil Uzi Vert, Playboi Carti, Jay-Z, Katy Perry, and Drake have sold their soul to achieve superstar status. That's why we see satanic/Luciferian imagery in their videos, according to this theory. Ancient cultures were advanced. Looking at ancient architecture from the past, you may question how these civilizations actually did it. Some have concluded that they were far more advanced than we ever give them credit for. Just take a look at some of these images. They look like they were created using power tools, right? With laser-like precision. Take for example the Pumapunku's precise stonework from Peru. These massive H-letter blocks were made using stones and sticks, as metal tools weren't prominent in the Americas at the time. We also got the mini pyramids across the world, which are still a mystery and up for debate on how they were built. Also, the strange contradiction in history, like the ancient indigenous Americans knowing of the wheel and using them for toys instead of using it as a tool, and so on. Tropical fantasy. This one is pretty complex and elaborate if true. Tropical fantasy is an inexpensive soft drink originally from Brooklyn, New York. Its low price of 49 cents per 21-ounce bottle led to its success in the 1990s. Tropical fantasy was initially popular in the inner city areas. The company did not employ large marketing campaigns and used simple store displays and low prices to sell its drinks. This made the product almost invisible to consumers not living in the areas where the beverages were sold. In April 1991, rumors began circulating in black neighborhoods that the beverage was laced with a secret ingredient that would sterilize black men. The beverage quickly earned the name Tropical Fanticide. The rumors claimed that the Ku Klux Klan was actually bottling the product and using the low price to attract poor citizens and to sterilize them. Later that year, rumors spread rapidly and provoked violence in many city neighborhoods. Attacks occurred on delivery trucks and storekeepers who stocked the Tropical Fantasy. Due to these rumors and rising suspicions, sales of the beverage plummeted by 70%. Now, the theory behind the theory is that due to its quick and rising popularity, as well as it being able to undercut its competitors in price, it's speculated that large soda companies were behind it all, generating the conspiracy in order to keep costs high. How did they do this though? Well, pamphlets were handed out throughout the public, warning people and spreading the sterilization theory, which became popular fast, but the source of these pamphlets were unknown. Mirror gazing. This one recently went viral on TikTok. Mirror gazing is basically the act of staring at yourself in a mirror for a long period of time, causing different types of hallucinating effects that creep people out. Some claim that when you do this, you're contacting the spiritual world, opening other dimensions, and or opening a portal for demons and other entities. There are tons of videos explaining how to do this properly and warning you about the quote-unquote consequences. Some also take a less spiritual approach to this practice, believing that it's good for your subconscious mind. But I don't know, what do you guys think about this one? The most dangerous book. This one is pretty vague and may be referring to the 48 Laws of Power that details the laws for attaining power in life, business, and more, and gives historical examples of each law in practice, as well as examples of those who do not respect these laws. The book has been banned by several US prisons due to prisoners using it to manipulate other inmates. It could also be referencing the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a book that perpetuated anti-Semitic views and was used by many controversial leaders to justify atrocities committed against the Jews. A fabricated anti-Semitic text describing a Jewish plan for global domination, the hoax was plagiarized from several other sources, some not even anti-Semitic in nature. It was first published in Russia in 1903, translated into multiple languages, and disseminated internationally in the early part of the 20th century. It played the key part in popularizing the belief in an international Jewish conspiracy. Randonautica. Randonautica is an app launched on February 22nd, 2020, founded by Joshua Langfelder. It randomly generates coordinates that enable the user to explore their local areas and report on their findings. According to its creator, the app is an attractor of strange things, letting one choose specific coordinates based on a certain theme. The most trending controversy involved a group of people heading to a beach in West Seattle, as ordered by the app, where they found a bag with two dead bodies, 27 and 36, male and female, as reported by Seattle police homicide detectives. In addition, Randonautica has also received allegations that the app is used for human trafficking, which its creators have strongly denied, saying that the data collected by the app are anonymous, though the data is collected. Tunnels underneath the United States. From the 200,000 abandoned underground bomb shelters from the Cold War to subway station projects that were left unfinished, there's almost another world underneath the US that is left uninhabited. Or is it? Mole people, also called tunnel people or tunnel dwellers, are homeless people living under large cities in abandoned subway, railroad, and sewage tunnels. Media accounts have reported mole people living underneath large cities, like in Las Vegas. It is estimated that about 1,000 homeless people find shelter in the storm drains underneath the city for protection from extreme temperatures. Some believe that these places are responsible for those that have simply vanished without a trace, and that dangerous criminals inhabit these areas to evade law enforcement, being free to do whatever they please down there. Now let's move on to the depths. Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman was a former NFL star and US Army Ranger that was killed due to friendly fire in Afghanistan. Initially thought to be from an attack, it turns out it was friendly fire from someone within his own group, at close range. Further investigation suggested that it could have been done on purpose as well, due to his criticisms of the war at the time or simply knowing something that he shouldn't have. It was reported that members of Tillman's unit burned his body armor and uniform in an apparent attempt to hide the fact that he was killed by friendly fire. His notebook, in which according to author John Craker, Tillman had recorded some of his negative thoughts of the war in Afghanistan, was also burnt, a blatant violation of protocol. Several soldiers were subsequently punished for their actions by being removed from the United States Army Rangers, though some believe everyone in the chain of command was complicit with his death. Gang stalking theory. Victims of the gang stalking phenomenon refer to themselves as targeted individuals. They believe that some members of the public are in cahoots with an organization that intends to ruin their life, for various reasons. Most victims are unsure as to why they are being followed. Answers range from being in an elaborate scientific experiment to the government having a vested interest in them, all the way down to them knowing too much about the aliens and reptilians that run the world governments. Though the majority of targeted individuals are categorized as delusional due to their lack of evidence, some are lucky enough to provide proof. Take Vasika Tafara's story for example. When she would get home from work, she would notice that things were out of place in her house, like all the windows in her home being left open at the same level, cabinets being pulled out halfway, and lights being left on. She even found a camera in her son's bedroom. Worried about what was occurring, she searched online to try to find an answer and came across a gang stalking story that she could relate to. In order to see what was going on, she left her phone recording in a hidden place and captured what seemed to be various people rummaging through her home. When she tried to get help from authorities, they told her that they really couldn't do anything for her, leaving her feeling hopeless. Ernest Hemingway, the prolific American novelist, also had an experience with gang stalking. He would write about how the FBI or CIA would follow him everywhere he went, becoming paranoid about agents stalking him. He would sneak his way around the United States. Even having his close friends began to question his own sanity. He would later go on to describe it as the worst hell, having no privacy. Due to this paranoia, he was admitted to a psych facility where he underwent electric shock therapy. Eventually, the psychological toll of it all catched up to him, committing suicide in his Idaho home. Years after his death, the FBI was forced to release documents revealing that Ernest Hemingway was being kept on tabs for years, tracking the places he visited and the people he met, justifying the paranoia. His close friends later went on to say that this contributed to his suicide. Nazi Antarctic Base. New Swabia was a piece of Antarctica that was claimed by Nazi Germany in 1939, named after their expedition ship. The purpose of the expedition was to find and set up whaling stations for the Third Reich to increase the production of fat. Whale oil was vital to the Germans, but some believed that it was a cover-up for their true intentions, believing that they were building military bases and bunkers there. Operation High Jump is referenced as evidence of this being true. Operation High Jump was a U.S. Navy operation that involved the training personnel in the extreme frigid environment of Antarctica for combat. Advocates of this idea believed that they were in fact involved in an assault against German Nazi settlements in Antarctica, explaining the deaths that occurred during the Operation High Jump training. A supposed Nazi map outlining underground passages through Antarctica can be found online, crediting the KGB for finding it. The map details how German U-boats should navigate the underwater passages of Antarctica. The Middle Ages never happened. Known as the Phantom Time Hypothesis, this theory hypothesizes a conspiracy by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III to fabricate the Anno Domini dating system retroactively in order to place them at the special year of 1000 AD and to rewrite history in order to legitimize Otto's claim to the Holy Roman Empire. Some of the evidence for this theory is that there's a scarcity of archaeological evidence that can be reliably dated to the period 614 through 911 AD. Another is that the medieval historians rely too much on written sources, therefore heavily relying on the source to be truthful and accurate. Ancient Antarctica. Antarctica. Some believe that this is where an ancient civilization once ruled, believing that it was only covered in ice sheets 12,000 years ago, based on the crustal displacement theory. Some support this claim by referencing Antarctica's pyramid-like geologic structure. This structure is a four-sided pyramid model, resembling the pyramids in Egypt, but geologists dispute this idea and believe that it's a result of natural geologic formation. Another strange geologic composition that was found resembled a man-made settlement. The rings surrounding the center look purposely designed as fortifications, but for what? The cold, predators, or enemies? Scientists credit the harsh cold winds that formed the structure, but others disagree. Nobody has actually explored the area by foot, and it was only analyzed via satellite images, so nobody really knows. Courage the Cowardly Dog, based on a real house. Supposedly, the single house in the middle of nowhere in the series is based on a real house in New Mexico, where an elderly couple used to live. They reported many strange incidents, and in one report mentioned seeing a skinwalker. Weeks later, they vanished, and only their dog was found in the home. At first, the story and picture that went viral seems fake, but the house is actually real, and located in a city named Truth or Consequences in New Mexico. But the reality is even worse, as the house was the place where the real gruesome murder took place by serial killer David Parker Ray, targeting homes that were isolated from people and emergency services. Ray soundproofed a semi-trailer, which was called his quote-unquote toy box, and equipped it with items used for torture. He used surgical tools on some of his victims. Yeah, the details are very disturbing to say the least. YouTube's algorithm rabbit hole. This is referencing the problem YouTube had with its algorithm, or I would say it was more of a downside to such good technology. Of course, going down rabbit holes on YouTube was fun, and it used to be even better back when a few clicks could get you on that weird side of YouTube, that conspiracy theory side of YouTube. But there was a downside. Online predators exploited the algorithm to help them find seemingly innocent videos kids posted for fun, but they watched them with a different intent, posting timestamps in their comment sections that showcased them and revealing clothes and positions. There was also a radicalization problem. See, YouTube's algorithm was made in a way to keep you from leaving the site, so they would suggest videos that were really specific to the niche you enjoyed watching, creating an echo chamber if you remained on a specific side of the website. So if you were into conspiracy theories, let's say, things could get very interesting fast. You would get hour-plus videos on how space is fake and totally made up to hide the truth of what's really out there. Though this was tame, as some videos and theories pushed people to radicalization, forcing YouTube to adjust the algorithm and add way more filters. Operation Northwoods. Now this one's quite interesting due to the fact that it's true. The United States was considering harming its own citizens in order to trigger a war. Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation against American citizens that originated within the US Department of Defense of the United States government in 1962. The proposals called for CIA operatives to both stage and actually commit acts of terrorism against American military and civilian targets, blaming them on the Cuban government and using it to justify a war against Cuba. The possibilities detailed in the document included the possible assassination of Cuban immigrants, sinking boats of Cuban refugees on the high seas, hijacking planes to be shot down or given the appearance of being shot down, blowing up a US ship, and orchestrating violent terrorism in US cities. The proposal was rejected by President John F. Kennedy, though. The physical document on Operation Northwoods became declassified through the John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992. This act declassified a total of 4 million documents, including Operation Northwoods, and was made available through the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. However, public knowledge of Operation Northwoods did not come until 2001 with the release of the book by the author James Bamford titled Body of Secrets. People vanishing in national parks. On average, 270 million people visit American national parks each year, so it's not so surprising that every once in a while people go missing, right? Well, if it's a missing 411 case, it is. Missing 411 cases usually have strange similarities, such as the missing person being found in an almost humanly impossible area to reach by foot, or disappearing in a blink of an eye, and if they're found alive, most of them have no recollection of what had occurred. Take the case of Dr. James McCrogan, for example. After landing a brand new job, he went on a hiking trip with a group of physicians. Along their trail, McCrogan decided to not take the group break and just pushed forward. 20 days later, he was found dead, 16 miles away. On him was a charged phone with reception, working GPS, and minimal clothes, as his boots, sweater, and gloves were taken off. Some people blame the Native American legends, skinwalkers, wendigos, and other paranormal phenomena. The dead internet theory. According to this theory, the internet has died and has been completely commercialized and controlled by an unknown entity. People have stated that they feel like the internet used to be more fun and liberating, as opposed to how it feels like now, being more safe and bland, using the same websites and apps over and over again. Some report that most people online aren't even real, as most sites are filled with inactive accounts and bots, used to fluff a company's buzz. This also goes for most sites being automated by bots. The majority of online articles are written by an AI, according to some believers. Global consciousness. So we all have consciousness, right? Of course, some people may seem like NPCs, but that's besides the point. This theory states that there is a larger consciousness, a global one to be more specific, and that we all contribute to it through our own personal consciousness, affecting our community surroundings, and there's a group trying to prove that it's true. The Global Consciousness Project is an experiment begun in 1998 as an attempt to detect possible interactions of global consciousness with physical systems. The project monitors a geographically distributed network of random number generators and hopes to identify anomalous outputs that correlate with widespread emotional responses to extreme world events, or periods of focused attention by large numbers of people. One example would be the events on 9/11 in the United States, which caused strange outputs by the number generators, like not generating at all to repeating patterns. The GCP is privately funded through the Institute of Noetic Sciences and is described as an international collaboration of about 100 research scientists and engineers. God's ego death. Ego death. It explains itself. It's the death of your ego, the thing that tells you you're more important than the next guy. It's the complete loss of subjective self-identity. And that's what this theory states. God's ego died. Comparing the Old Testament to the New and the Old Testament, we find that God unleashes his wrath in full display, if ever slightly disrespected. But in the New Gospels, we find that he is more loving and compassionate than his former being, showing the evidence of his ego death. Guatemala Stonehead. In the 1930s, explorers found an enormous, eloquently made sandstone statue in the middle of a Guatemalan jungle. The face carved in the stone didn't resemble the facial features of the Maya or any of the other people known to have populated the lands. In fact, its elongated cranium and fine features didn't seem to belong in the history books at all. Researchers have claimed that the statue's unique features depict a member of an ancient alien civilization that was far more advanced than any other prehistoric races of America we know about. Some even speculated that the head might just be part of a much larger construct underneath. This was found to be untrue though. Of course, there's a chance that the statue might be a work of a more recent artist or even a complete hoax. Sadly, we will probably never find out for sure. The head was used for target practice by revolutionary troops and its features have been destroyed to near obscurity. The whole thing about it not resembling the facial features of the population surrounding it, I think that's BS. We can see that even the Olmecs made sculptures with different types of facial features like we see in these. I mean, it's not like everybody looked the same in Guatemala. Phones cause cancer theory. Smartphones have become everything to modern man. It connects us to family, friends, and strangers. It provides tools that help us navigate Earth, order food straight to our doors, and pay for things without a physical exchange, keeping it close to you, in your pocket, bag, or purse throughout the entire day, and leaving it on your nightstand before you go to bed. Almost a literal extension on your body, but not quite. It's hard to remember that these devices are just tools, and like all tools, they're not perfect and are not without harm if used incorrectly. But do phones cause cancer, or any negative effects that reduce life expectancy? Well, the answer is pending, as more research needs to be done, but many people attribute their cancer to phones. Take Nancy, a 34-year-old Asian American. She was a healthy avid runner. One day, she began to feel irritations around her right breast in 2009. She didn't think much of it and let it be, until the irritations got worse and worse. She proceeded to get looked at by a doctor, which led to the discovery of breast cancer. Nancy knew that breast cancer, or any cancer for that matter, had never been a problem within her family. Then Nancy recalled that she would always place her phone in her bra while she was driving. She estimated that she had done this for 10 years or so, for about 4 hours every day. Her doctor noted the correlation and reported it for a collection of similar results. Another example is Alexis, a 21-year-old that presented to the emergency room with a bloody nipple, discharging blood on her left breast. Abnormal masses were shown on the MRI. She too had a history of placing her phone in her bra, specifically on the left side, for hours at a time. Her mammogram presented 12 centimeters of cells distributed by tumors in her breast tissue, showing an outline of where the phone was kept. But we cannot draw a solid conclusion just yet. The modern day cell phone began to stabilize its cells worldwide around 2014. Before that, the population owning smartphones was not stagnant enough to pick a sample from the population, or you could choose a control group. Music is more profound than just entertainment. This theory implies that music has more of a spiritual tie than we seem to believe, or at least more natural to humans. Usually, people would categorize music alongside other forms of entertainment like films and sports. What makes music even more unique is that it may have even come before everything else. Linguists theorized that music came first and that the language part came after. Evidence was collected from infant development, music cognition, and language skills that led scientists to believe that language may have derived from music and that it's almost a specific type of music. This theory is also highlighting the power it has over people, as music has been shown to reduce pain and even helps people with dementia recall memories better, improve general thought process, and even speak more. Though it can also be used for darker things, as music can also amplify feelings of depression and make one more aggressive. According to the APA, researchers from Iowa State University and the Texas Department of Human Services found that aggressive music lyrics increase aggressive thoughts and feelings, which might perpetuate aggressive behavior and have long-term effects, such as influencing the listener's perceptions of society. There is no truth. False societal order. This theory states that there is no absolute truth, and that we're all lost building upon what other human beings have made up. Though this may seem grim, some find this liberating and find solace in knowing that nobody else knows what they're doing. False societal order means that even though governments try to control the public and build up institutions in which we find comfort, it's not real, and that everything is a facade made to keep peace for those who take advantage of people, the mega rich and wealthy, or basically pawns in a giant game. Microplastics will end humanity. Microplastics are fragments of any type of plastic less than 5 millimeters in length. You may have seen the memes and other news going around about microplastics being found in the human body. Because plastics degrade slowly, often over hundreds of thousands of years, microplastics have a high probability of ingestion, incorporation into an accumulation in the bodies and tissues of many organisms. And that doesn't just count for humans. The toxic chemicals that come from both the ocean and the runoff can also biomagnify up the food chain, meaning that we're consuming plastics one way or the other. But how does this affect us? And will this affect our health? Well, research and studies are finding links between microplastics and cancer. One paper made a connection between the increase in cancers found in wildlife and the microplastics they consume from our pollution. Not only that, it's also hypothesized that they're affecting hormone levels, based on experiments they've done on rats. Staring control. The average American spends over 7 hours a day staring at some sort of electronic screen. Now that's just the United States. Now imagine how many hours combined globally. This theory states that world elites are getting us accustomed to staring at screens for long periods of time, as some sort of control over the population, in order to keep us distracted from other things, otherwise known as staring control. If you take a third-person perspective view of yourself, it looks rather crazy. We're often blankly staring at something on a thin screen for hours at a time. Predictive programming. This theory poses the idea that the government integrates things in popular media in order to get the public ready for what the next big thing is, whether that be a new tech or events that will occur in the future. Some provide evidence including 9/11 predictions in cartoons, games, and advertisements. Also, The Simpsons' multiple coincidences. Yeah, it's kinda creepy to think that some of these are spot-on parallels. Some also claim that the film Cuties was allowed to be on Netflix in order to normalize predatory content. Voiceless pop star singers. This entry is in reference to pop star singers that have possibly been voiceovered by another more trained singer, also working like a ghostwriter, but instead of writing it, it's singing the lyrics. Take for example Milli Vanilli, exposed for lip singing. Milli Vanilli was a German-French R&B duo from Munich. They became one of the most popular pop acts in the late 1980s and early 1990s, with millions of records sold. However, their success turned to infamy when it was discovered that Morvan and Pilatus did not sing any of the vocals on their music releases. They even ended up returning their Grammy Award for the Best New Artist, and they could have almost gotten away with it if it wasn't for that mishap. Imagine how easy it is to pull something like this off nowadays with all the new current technology. Yeah, I wonder how many pop stars out there are lip syncing. Argentinian gnome. The Argentinian gnome was an entity allegedly caught on film in a small town in Argentina in 2008. The creature was described as having terrorized a small town, but was later revealed to be a hoax since no one else in the village ever reported seeing anything of the kind. It was most likely just rumor on the internet. Obama theories. Former US President Barack Obama has been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories. His presidency was the subject of a 2009 film, The Obama Deception, by Alex Jones, which alleged that Obama's administration was a puppet government for a wealthy elite. Another theory, which came to prominence in 2009, known as birthism, denies the legitimacy of Obama's presidency by claiming that he was not born in the United States. This theory has persisted despite the evidence of his Hawaiian birth certificate and of his birth announcements in 2 Hawaiian newspapers in 1961, though some believe that these were made after the fact. Other theories also claim that Obama, a Protestant Christian, is secretly a Muslim, and was hiding his true religion in order to be elected. Vegans/vegetarians aren't crazy. When you think of the word vegan, what do you think of? Does outspoken and obnoxious usually pop to mind? Some person crazy about animal rights, protesting in the most ridiculous way? Well, this may not have been by chance. According to some, the meat industry puts out propaganda to make vegans and vegetarians look crazy, theorizing that PETA was started by the meat industry to control the narrative by portraying vegans as extremists, as it sometimes seems like PETA does more damage to their image than build up their reputation to look more appealing. I mean, why would you purposely turn people off from your organization if you truly want change? It doesn't make sense to put out ridiculous requests like stop using anti-animal language. You're just pissing people off at that point. Gloria Ramirez. Gloria Ramirez was a woman from Riverside, California, who was dubbed the Toxic Lady or the Toxic Woman by the media when several hospital workers became ill after exposure to her body and blood. She had been admitted to the emergency department while suffering from late-stage cervical cancer. While treating Ramirez, several hospital workers fainted and others experienced symptoms such as shortness of breath and muscle spasms. 5 workers required hospitalization, one of whom remained in intensive care unit for almost 2 weeks. Shortly after arriving at the hospital, Ramirez died from complications related to the cancer. The incident was considered to be a case of mass hysteria. Denver International Airport. This may be referring to the strange artwork depicted at the site. Denver International Airport has 4 murals, all of which have been the topic of conspiracy theorists and debate. The murals are ambiguous in meaning, depicting scenes including caged animals, fires, suffering people, and a soldier with a blade and a gas mask. They have been interpreted in the past by onlookers to represent war, hope, and even the New World Order. Blue Mustang by El Paso-born artist Luis Jimenez was one of the earliest public artist commissions for Denver International Airport in 1993. The 32-foot-tall sculpture is a bright blue cast fiberglass sculpture of a horse with glowing red eyes, located between the inbound and outbound lanes of Pina Boulevard. Jimenez was killed in 2006 at age 65 while creating the sculpture itself, when a part of it fell on him and severed an artery in his leg. At the time of his death, Jimenez had completed painting the head of the Mustang. Blue Mustang was completed by others and unveiled at the airport on February 11, 2008. The statue has since been the subject of considerable controversy and has acquired the nickname Lucifer for its demonic appearance. In 2020, there was a video trying to debunk these myths, all coming directly from the airport representatives, though it seems like the comments aren't really buying it. Toxic baby food control. This theory puts forth the idea that the government and/or companies feed children toxic food, whether that be through their products and/or restaurants, not caring whether it contains something as dangerous as heavy metals or not. Overall, prioritizing revenue. Well, this one's almost 100% true. It's recently been proven that the most popular baby foods on the market all contain high levels of toxic metals, which can lead to things such as cancers and low IQ. Now, why would this even be considered to be done on purpose? Well, some believe that it's a way to keep control of the population, as they would be the easiest to control. Stoned ape. The stoned ape theory hypothesizes that the reason why the human species has evolved to the point that we're at now is because of hallucinogenic mushrooms. In his 1992 book, Food of the Gods, McKenna proposed that the transformation from humans' early ancestors, Homo erectus, to the species Homo sapiens mainly had to do with the addition of the mushroom psilocybe, consistent in the diets, an event that, according to his theory, took place in about 100,000 BCE. McKenna based his theory on the main effects or alleged effects produced by the mushroom. McKenna stated that due to the desertification of the African continent at the time, human foreigners were forced from the increasingly shrinking tropical canopy into search of new food sources. He believed that they would have been following large herds of wild cattle, whose dung harbored the insects that he proposed were undoubtedly part of their new diet, and would have spotted and started eating Psilocybe subensis, a dung-loving mushroom often found growing out of cow pats. This caused the individuals who were consuming psilocybin mushrooms to be better hunters than those who were not, resulting in an increased food supply and in turn higher rates of reproductive success. Ghost cities. Ghost cities are described as cities that vaguely appear in the sky. Often reported in China, the cities appear to be floating in the sky when they suddenly disappear. Some claim that these are simply mirages, optical illusions due to the bad air pollution in China. Others believe that they're gateways to other worlds. These videos began to surface in the early 2010s on the internet. Prism. Prism began in 2007 in the wake of the passage of the Protect America Act under the Bush administration. Prism is a code name for a program run by the National Security Agency. aka the NSA, that collects internet communications from various US internet companies like Google and Facebook. And by the internet communications, they mean your personal everyday chats that you have with friends and family, among other things. The NSA can use these PRISM requests to target communications that are encrypted when they travel across the internet's backbone. Its existence was leaked 6 years later by NSA contractor and whistleblower Edward Snowden, who warned that the extent of mass data collection was far greater than the public knew and included what he characterized as dangerous and criminal activities. The disclosures were published by The Guardian and The Washington Post on June 6, 2013. Subsequent documents have demonstrated a financial agreement between the NSA's Special Sources Operations Division and PRISM partners in the millions of dollars. Fake animal rescue channels. This theory states that those often viral animal rescue videos are most likely staged, and that the channel owners are cruelly treating animals for views and money, portraying themselves as good people and heroes to the public for saving the animals, but in reality, there's something really dark going on. Backwards time travel complexities. Time travel is the concept of movement between certain points in time, analogous to the movement between different points in space by an object or a person, typically with the use of a hypothetical device known as a time machine. It is uncertain if time travel to the past is physically possible, and such travel, if at all feasible, may give rise to questions of all of its paradoxes. Many in the scientific community believe that backwards time travel is highly unlikely. Any theory that would allow time travel would introduce potential problems of causality, the relationship between cause and effect. The classic example of a problem involving causality is the grandfather paradox, which involves traveling to the past and ending your grandfather's life. This would mean that your father or your mother wouldn't be born, meaning that you wouldn't have been born either, as they wouldn't have met, which also means that you wouldn't have ever existed to kill your grandfather in the first place. This is all a paradox. There's also the bootstrap paradox that questions the existence of free will, if possible. Here's an example. Let's say you go back in time and meet up with the young Steve Jobs and give him the fully fleshed out idea of an iPhone, and he goes on to create them and releases them to the public. Now, the question is, who came up with the idea for the iPhone? Was it Steve Jobs or was it you? Where did the idea originally come from in this case? Dark web honeypots. This theory states that most, if not all, of these supposed dark web illegal websites are fake and simply FBI honeypots used to catch criminals. Yeah, that hitman you tried to hire on the dark web is most likely not going to take out your enemy. Those interesting red rooms you heard about won't unlock if you pay them 5 bitcoins, and no, the website you tried to access to order an atomic bomb isn't gonna work. You're probably on some type of list now. Me equals bugs. This is referring to the theory that the government or the powers that be are trying to accustom us to eat bugs, and that the final solution to our overconsumption of meat is to replace it with bugs instead. That means instead of farms full of chickens and cows, there's going to be farming of insects. But wait, it already exists. See, the United Nations published a paper on why insects have to be the food of the future in order to fix the hunger crisis we will face, as land scarcity and climate change become a norm, claiming that crickets are nutritious and produce way less greenhouse gas emissions than cattle, with a lot less land required. So overall, bugs need to replace meat, a rather scary concept to some. Ancient astronauts. Ancient astronauts refers to a pseudoscientific hypothesis which holds that intelligent extraterrestrial beings visited Earth and made contact with humans in antiquity and prehistoric times. Proponents suggest that this contact influenced the development of modern cultures, technologies, religions, and human biology. A common position is that deities from most, if not all, religions are extraterrestrial in origin, and that advanced technologies brought to Earth by ancient astronauts were interpreted as evidence of divine status by early humans. Let's move on to the abyss. Recycling is a scam. You might be surprised to find out that most plastics are not recyclable. Even the process to recycle the ones you're able to is a labor-intensive and expensive process. Making new plastic is by far cheaper and overall more convenient. In 1970, the recycling symbol was created and popularized as the sign that a plastic was recyclable. Plastic companies, in the effort to look good in the public eye, created their own symbol that looks really similar, although it doesn't exactly mean the same thing. See, their symbol is called the Resin Identification Code, and there's 7 of them, although only 2 of the 7 codes means that they are recyclable. But all of them carry the same logo, tricking consumers into thinking that all their containers are environmentally friendly. There's also a limit on how many times a plastic can be recycled, as the material wears down over time, meaning it's not sustainable at all. Interesting J. Epstein details. So I'm going to be referring to this pervert as simply Epstein, and use the abbreviation SA to be YouTube friendly. In 2005, police in Palm Beach, Florida began investigating Epstein after a parent reported that he had SA'd her 14-year-old daughter. Epstein pleaded guilty and was convicted in 2008 by a Florida state court. He served almost 13 months in custody, but with extensive work release. He was convicted of only 2 crimes as part of a controversial plea deal, even though federal officials had identified 36 girls, some as young as 14, whom Epstein had allegedly essayed. Epstein was arrested again on July 6, 2019, on federal charges this time, for trafficking of minors in Florida and New York. He died in his jail cell on August 10, 2019. The medical examiner ruled the death a suicide, although Epstein's lawyers have disputed the ruling, and there has been significant public skepticism about the true cause of his death, or even that he died, resulting in numerous conspiracy theories, such as him being killed on purpose for having dirt on high-profile names like Gates and Prince Andrew. Both presented nervously when confronted about the allegations as well. There were also other fascinating mysteries behind his US Virgin Islands where most of these allegations took place, like the strange artwork found there, as well as the many cameras found all throughout. Christian sun worship. Though sun worship has been used frequently as a term for pagan religions, it is in fact relatively rare. Almost every culture uses solar motifs and or hieroglyphs. Only a few cultures, some Indo-European, Egyptian, and Mesoamerican, developed their own solar religions, and some believe that its aspects were integrated into Catholicism and Christianity as a whole, explaining why we see tons of sun imagery in old Christian artwork, also explaining that Jesus' 12 apostles represent 12 constellations and the 12 zodiac signs that exist, and that Jesus represents the sun. But then again, this is all up to interpretation. Superplant apocalypse. As we progress into the future, our crops are going to evolve to deal with certain widespread pests and the changing climate due to pollution, so they'll become very resistant and strong. So who's to say that we won't eventually come to a point where we can't stop a certain crop from growing and killing other native species around it? Yeah, this theory is rather creepy. It states that a superplant apocalypse is possible due to a certain crop killing ecosystems, other varieties of vegetation, and eventually causing mass starvation due to it being a single crop with no other nutritional benefit. This would also go through the food chain, meaning that animals would suffer from this as well. The Bored Ape Conspiracy. Bored Ape Yacht Club, BAYC, or often called Bored Ape, is a non-fungible token NFT collection built on the Ethereum blockchain. The collection features profile pictures of cartoon apes that are precariously generated by an algorithm. Recently, there has been a theory going around stating that the company is ran by Nazi sympathizers. Yeah, it gets pretty interesting. Investigators have found similarities between the Bored Ape logo and the Waffen-Tokenpaf SS division of the Nazi military. Both share 18 teeth, which is a special number for Nazi sympathizers, as 18 is a cryptic reference to the Nazi leader Hitler. There's also some strange stuff going on with some of the co-founder Twitter usernames. One of them, named Emperor Tomato Ketchup, shares the same name as a controversial film that depicts graphic images of a kid throwing up the Nazi salute, and trust me, it goes deeper than that. Water is poison. This entry could have several interpretations. One theory puts forth the idea that the government is poisoning the water supply with contaminants that are known to be dangerous to humans. For example, some people think that fluoride in the water overall negatively affects us than do us any good. Although fluoride has many proven benefits for oral health by reducing dental cavities, there has been recent research that has brought doubt into the effectiveness of community water fluoridation. There's also been a study that found reduced IQ scores for children 3 to 4 years old who were exposed to fluoride in the womb, which is a pretty dark result for something that's supposed to be positive for us. The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is an illustrated codex handwritten in an unknown, possibly meaningless writing system. The manuscript is named after Wilfred Voynich, a Polish book dealer who purchased it in 1912. The vellum of which it is written has been carbon dated to the early 15th century, 1404 through 1438. And the text may have been composed in Italy during the Italian Renaissance. However, despite various hypotheses, its origins and authorship are unambiguously unknown. Some of the pages are missing, with around 240 pages remaining. The text is written from left to right, and most of the pages have illustrations or diagrams. Some pages are foldable sheets of varying sizes. The Voynich manuscript has been studied by many professionals and amateur cryptographers, including American and British codebreakers from both World War I and World War II. The manuscript has never been demonstrably deciphered, and none of the many hypotheses proposed over the last hundreds of years have been independently verified. The mystery of its meaning and origin has excited the popular imagination, making it the subject of study and speculation. The overall impression given by the surviving leaves of the manuscript is that it wasn't meant to serve as some sort of pharmacopoeia or to address topics in medieval or early modern medicine. However, the puzzling details of the illustrations have fueled many theories about the book's origin, the context of its texts, and the purpose of which it was intended for. Coochie's Key West Cafe. Shortly after the restaurant was demolished in 2009, an unnamed commenter going by many different names appeared online. This person has commented on websites all over the internet, usually with the same message, a long creepy rant about Coochie's Key West Cafe, his gorgeous wife Anita, and their amazing pie and cheeseburgers. Now, taken at face value, the comments don't seem all that bad, they're almost comical, but when you realize that there's hundreds of them, and they've been going on for almost a decade, well, that's considerably creepier. I mean, the comments themselves ramble on about nonsense and are incoherent in nature, with a few keywords repeating in every other comment. And some are found on the most obscure websites as well, which have little traffic. People theorized that it was some sort of cryptic message, a way people communicate, until they came to the literal message and concluded that it came from an actual, now closed location, Coochie's Key West Cafe, but they would come to find out that the restaurant had been closed for years. So why would the comments start to appear now? Well, some theorize that the thing behind it is not human, but rather a web crawling bot made to leave comments on random sites to appear high on the search listing. And the owner does this on purpose in order to throw off potential future employers from finding the more darker things he's involved in, like scams and such. Redemption movement. This one basically involves people who believe that they have cheat codes that could unlock a secret money owed to them by the IRS. The redemption movement is a debt-resistant movement which is primarily active in the United States and Canada. Participants allege that a secret fund is created for every citizen at birth, and that a procedure exists to redeem or reclaim this fund to pay bills. Common redemption schemes include acceptance for value, treasury direct accounts, and secured party credit kits. Such tactics are sometimes called money-for-nothing schemes, as their aim is ultimately to extract money from the government by using these secret methods. Those who participate in redemption schemes, and especially those who promote them to other people, can face criminal charges and imprisonment. Several government institutions, including the FBI, have issued warnings about the fraudulent character of redemption schemes. Flying rays. On December 3, 2004 in Mason County, witnesses reported seeing a flying manta ray. On a clear night, after a man and a woman departed Point Pleasant, the woman noticed a sudden movement in the sky over the Ohio River. It was a grayish, smooth-winged shape. The shape swooped in a figure 8 in front of the windshield and was gone in an instant. Another sighting was reported in Randolph County, near Black Fork and Blackwater River. A woman and her daughter saw a manta ray-shaped creature that glided near their car. Fake social media followers. This on face value simply means that fake social media followers exist to make someone's account look more popular than it actually is. But this could also tie back to the idea that most accounts on social media are bots to make a website or app more popping than it actually is. Take for example the whole Twitter fiasco. The Pew Research Center estimates that 2/3 of all Twitter links are posted by bot accounts, not humans, and that automated accounts are responsible for 66% of all content on Twitter, which is rather unnerving. Elon Musk even reconsidered his purchase of Twitter Inc. because of this, and ultimately canceled his purchase. Mr. Michelle Obama. For a while during the Obama administration, there were rumors and speculations that Michelle Obama was transgender, from a man to a woman. Some believe that Jonas River was killed because of her comments affirming this conspiracy.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down. You know Michelle is a
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
There was also a slip-up Obama had while on air that was heavily used as evidence for this being true. This was when Obama accidentally referred to Michelle as Michael, a simple but pronounced hiccup. It used to be found on YouTube until most, if not all, of the clips were mysteriously taken down. There is this clip though where he speculated to almost say Michael instead of Michelle. Take a listen.
President, does anything scare him?
You know, well,
When Michelle's mad, I get worried.
Companies and government union suppression. If you don't know, a labor union is an organization of workers who work on maintaining or improving work conditions. They strive to defend and be the voice of the everyday worker by arguing for better wages and benefits. This theory states that governments and companies don't benefit from unions at all, so they intentionally suppress their popularity and the fact that it's completely legal to have. Take for example the Amazon situation and their campaign to stop the unionization of workers, as well as other companies. The outside of space. So we have Earth, we have the atmosphere that has layers, and we have the Milky Way galaxy, and we have almost never-ending space. So what's outside of that? Is there an outside of space and dark matter? Yeah, that's what this theory tries to posit. What is outside the observable universe? Some believe that space is infinite and that it goes on forever. Others think there's some mystical shit out there. And others believe that far enough you'll find repeating universes paralleling our exact actions and or different timelines.
Far out.
Bug chasing. Bug chasing is the rare practice of intentionally seeking HIV infection through sexual activity, basically sleeping with a lot of people to purposely get sick, which is rather dark, as HIV can lead to AIDS, which is a life-changing disease. There are some explanations for the behavior, ranging from sexual excitement at the idea of HIV positive status, to finding a shared sense of community with other HIV positive people, to being suicidal. By 2003, the concept had entered the public consciousness after Rolling Stone published Bug Chasers, the men who long to have HIV, an article describing the practice. Though it may have also existed way back since the AIDS crisis began, it has been since mentioned and or the focus of pieces of media and popular culture. Bug chasing behavior still persists as a niche behavior, in spite of the widespread availability of effective treatments that protect against HIV transmission and otherwise unprotected sex. The precise origins of bug chasing, the pursuit of HIV infection, are largely unknown, with its inception located either at the beginnings of the AIDS crisis or closer to the 1990s, but some believe that it was a planted fake story used to bash the homosexual community at the time, as they were often blamed for the AIDS epidemic. UFO time travel. UFO time travel may be in reference to the theory that believes that UFOs are simply people from the future using a time machine to go back in time, proving why they're usually not disturbing anything but rather hovering and observing, most likely trying to avoid the butterfly effect. But every time they've been caught on camera or crash landed, they subtly change the future, which is almost a theory within a theory. It goes deep. Nephilim. The Nephilim are mysterious beings or people in the Hebrew Bible who are large and strong. The word Nephilim is loosely translated as giants in some translations of the Hebrew Bible, but left untranslated in others. Jewish explanations interpret them as hybrid sons of fallen angels and humans on earth. The main reference to them is in Genesis, but the passage is ambiguous and the identity of the Nephilim is disputed. According to the book of Numbers 13:33, they later inhabited Canaan at the time of the Israelite conquest of Canaan. Writer Cotton Mather believed that the fossilized leg bones and teeth discovered near Albany, New York in 1705 were the remains of Nephilim who perished in the Great Flood. Paleontologists have then identified them as mastodon remains though. Let's move on to the pit. Purposeful crazy misinformation. This entry puts forth the idea that the powers that be put out crazy conspiracy theories in order to delegitimize the ones that are potentially real. This would make sense, right? You have a conspiracy theory like Big Brother is watching our every other move, and another theory that states that cartoon characters are real inside of an alternate universe. One of them does best to discredit the rest by making conspiracy theory followers sound completely loony. The Clinton body count. The Clinton body count refers to a conspiracy theory, parts of which have been advanced by Newsmax publisher Christopher Rudy, among others, that asserts that former US President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton have assassinated 50 or more of their associates. Such accusations have been around at least since the 1990s, when a pseudo-documentary film called The Clinton's Chronicles, produced by Larry Nicholas and promoted by Reverend Jerry Falwell, accused Bill Clinton of multiple crimes including murder. One example is the murder of Seth Rich, which occurred on July 10, 2016 at 4:20 a.m. in the Bloomingdale neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Rich died about an hour and a half after being shot twice in the back. He was murdered by an unknown perpetrator for unknown reasons, but police suspected that he had been the victim of an attempted robbery. The 27-year-old Rich was an employee of the Democratic National Committee, and his murder spawned several conspiracy theories, claiming that Rich had been involved with the leaked DNC emails in 2016. Scum Manifesto. Scum Manifesto was a radical feminist manifesto by Valerie Solanas, published in 1967. It argues that men have ruined the world and that it's up to women to fix it. To achieve this goal, it suggests the formation of Scum, an organization dedicated to overthrowing society and eliminating the male sex. The manifesto has been described as a satire or parody, especially due to its parallels with Freud's theory of femininity, though this is disputed. The term scum appeared on the cover of the first edition of Olympia Press as SCUM, and it was said to stand for Society for Cutting Up Men. Solanas objected though, insisting that it was not an acronym, although the expanded term appeared in a Village Voice ad she had written in 1967. The manifesto was little known until Solanas attempted to murder Andy Warhol in 1968, going into Andy Warhol's art studio and shooting him. This event brought significant public attention to the manifesto and Solanas herself. Some believe that the whole crazy SJW feminist movement was proof that a group of women were taking action and fulfilling what the book wanted. Fruit Machine, aka Gaydar. This one's actually got some ground in reality. The Fruit Machine was a device developed in Canada by Frank Robert Wake in the 1950s that was supposed to be able to identify gay men, derogatorily referred to as fruits. The subjects were made to view graphic images of men. The device then measured the diameter of the pupils of their eyes, the perspiration, and the pulse for a supposed erotic response. The machine was employed in Canada in the 1950s and 1960s during a campaign to eliminate all gay men from the civil service, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the military. A substantial number of workers lost their jobs because of this. People were first led to believe that the machine's purpose was to rate stress, which was a blatant lie though. After knowledge of its real purpose became widespread, few people volunteered for it. 5G health concerns. There's a community of people online who are heavily against the widespread use of 5G and the cell towers that are being built to support it. They claim that it slowly kills people and makes them sick, causing some to take action by starting protests and trying to destroy the cell towers themselves, claiming it increases the risk of cancer, dementia, autism, and infertility. Artificial food shortage. The food shortage conspiracy theory is a conspiracy theory which states that there's a plot to create an artificial famine, predominantly in the United States and globally. It lampoons on the idea of that the infrastructure of the food supply is under attack by outside forces in order to manufacture a famine, a way to strike fear into the population and keep them under control. Banned.video/BitChute. These are basically websites where a lot of people ran to when they were banned off YouTube, and where some now find their conspiratorial content. For example, Alex Jones ran to banned.video, and of course he's got his own website to post videos on, when he was completely banned from YouTube and other social medias. As for BitChute, they have a more relaxed policy compared to YouTube. You could find tons of flat earth and spaces fake videos on there. There's little to no regulation, most likely explaining its entry. Medical miracles. Although the term can have different definitions, a medical miracle generally refers to an unexpected recovery despite a dire prognosis. Frequently, the phrase has a religious connotation and is used to describe a supernatural or paranormal healing. Take for example 4-year-old Noah's story. Since a baby, he had suffered multiple infections. After a test, they found that he had an immune deficiency syndrome, his body not being able to remember viruses to fight them off the next time, meaning he would regularly catch the same infections. After being in the hospital for 5 days with a large breakout of hives which left his skin blue and almost being put on a feeding tube, Noah woke up feeling energetic and wanting food. His disease vanished without any explanation. Or take 33-year-old Serena's case of colon cancer, one of the deadliest cancers you could have. Afraid that she was going to leave her son before watching him grow up, she would tell herself affirmations that she would live and have her 2 tumors healed, often praying alongside missionaries. A day after having a supernatural experience, she went into the Mayo Clinic and found that the tumors had completely disappeared, with no trace of any cancer within her body, after CT scans and blood work. Yoga is a New World Order ritual. This entry is basically claiming that yoga is a satanic New World Order ritual, and is overall contributing to this New Age philosophy perpetuated in the media. Some claim that yoga postures are offerings to the 33 million Hindu gods, and that once you do these breathing techniques and postures as required by yoga, you're accepted by the gods, which will in turn bring unbeknownst curses upon you and your family. COINTELPRO. This theory was actually proven to be true. COINTELPRO is a series of covert and illegal projects actively conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, aka the FBI, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic American political organizations. FBI records show COINTELPRO resources targeted groups and individuals the FBI deemed subversive, including feminist organizations, the Communist Party USA, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists of the civil rights movements, and Black Power movements like Martin Luther King, the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party. The FBI has used covert operations against domestic political groups since its inception. However, covert operations under the official COINTELPRO label took place between 1956 and 1971. Many of the tactics used include discrediting targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals and groups using forged documents and planting false reports in the media, harassments, wrongful imprisonment, illegal violence, and assassination, according to some. All this supposedly being done in the name of protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Here's a popular example. Beginning in 1969, leaders of the Black Panther Party were targeted by the COINTELPRO and neutralized by being assassinated, imprisoned, publicly humiliated, or falsely charged with crimes. The Overton Bridge. The Overton Bridge is a bridge in Scotland that for some reason or another compels dogs to jump off of it. Since the 1950s, numerous reports of dogs either falling or jumping from the bridge have been reported, with the incident often resulting in serious injury or death upon landing on the rocks some 50 feet below. The bridge is nicknamed the Dog Suicide Bridge. Various explanations for these deaths have been proposed, ranging from natural accidents to paranormal activity. Unfavorable Semicircle. Unfavorable Semicircle is the name of a YouTube channel created in March 2015, which garnered attention for the high volume and unusual nature of the published videos. The videos often displayed abstract, pixelated images. In some cases, they show just a single dot in a field of solid brown. Some videos omit sound, while others feature distorted sounds. Due to the volume of the uploads and the odd nature of the videos, observers and people around the internet started to take notice. Eventually, a small community on Reddit formed to investigate the channel. Speculation as to what the channel might be used for includes it being used to test against the copyright system on YouTube to see how and why it's triggered. A piece of evidence could be in the title of the channel. The logo carries a semicircle in the middle and a circle around that, making out the copyright logo. A pretty scary sign for YouTubers. The channel had over 80,000 videos posted and a BBC article written about them just before it being terminated by YouTube. Cartoons are real. This one's a bit wacky. This theory puts forth the idea that there is a wormhole or an alternate universe in which cartoons such as The Simpsons, Family Guy, or The Amazing World of Gumball are real living beings, and that the idea behind these characters by their creators were inspired by past life memories from other dimensions. There's also the other theory that states we're watching real life beings in cartoons simply in a 2D reality, explaining why there's a never-ending supply of Simpsons episodes. Purpose of dreaming. One widely held theory about the purpose of dreams is that they help you store important memories and things you've learned, get rid of unimportant memories, and sort through complicated thoughts and feelings. Research shows that sleep helps store memories better. If you learn new information and sleep on it, you'll be able to recall it better than if asked to remember the information without the benefit of sleep. Some also believe that sleep is an alternate reality, a different dimension that you slowly creep into when entering deep sleep, explaining why they trigger great emotional response, as they almost feel real. Consciousness after death. Consciousness after death is a common theme in society and culture in the context of life after death. Scientific research has established that the physiological functioning of the brain, the cessation of which defines brain death, is closely connected to mental states. However, many believe in some form of life after death, which is a feature of many religions. Neuroimaging correlation studies cannot determine whether neural activity plays a casual role in the occurrence of mental processes, thinking and imagining, because correlation doesn't imply causation, and they cannot determine if the neural activity is either necessary or sufficient for such process to occur. The closest thing we have through the lens of being dead comes in the form of NDE, near-death experiences, where some people recall having unique visions when nearly dead. A common experience when dying is people seeing a white glowing light right after passing out, and then what precedes is a unique experience. Some people see a godlike figure talking to them, a dead relative telling them that it's not their turn to leave the earth yet, and or leaving their body and seeing it in a third-person perspective. The Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones were a set of granite monuments that stood in Elbert County, Georgia, United States from 1980 to 2022. They were 19 feet 3 inches tall and made from 6 granite slabs weighing a total of 237,000 pounds. The structure was sometimes referred to as an American Stonehenge. According to the writing, the monument's creators believed that there was going to be an up-and-coming social, nuclear, or economic calamity, and they wanted the monument to serve as a guide for humanity in the world, which would exist after it. They initially garnered little controversy, but they ultimately became the subject of conspiracy theories, which alleged that they were connected to Satanism. The motive and creators remain unknown. Though on the morning of July 6, 2022, the Guidestones were heavily damaged in a mysterious bombing, and they were dismantled later that day. Jade Helm. The Jade Helm 15 conspiracy theories were based on the Jade Helm 15 United States military training exercises, which took place in multiple U.S. states between July 15th and September 15th, 2015. The exercise, which involved 1,200 personnel from 4 of the 5 branches of the U.S. military, was designed to train soldiers in skill shown here from the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, which divides the region into 4 colors, with 2 hostile states, 2 permissive states, 2 states leaning one way or the other, and California divided. Jim Shea wrote that the knocking in space. In October 2003, Yang Liwei became the first person sent into space by the Chinese space program. The mission, Shenzhou 5, made China the 3rd country to independently send humans into space. Well, during this time up there, he recalled something really strange that occurred. In the dead of silence of space, he began hearing knocking, which sounded like it was coming from the outside of the spacecraft. It sounded like someone was knocking at the door to be let inside. The knocking upset Yang, as he believed that it was some sort of technical malfunction, leading him to check if everything was running normally. And it was. Nothing was wrong with the ship, no leaks or any pressure malfunctions. Yet the knocking noise still persisted after 21 hours in space. Yang's mental stability was rigorously tested by the Chinese government before being sent into space, so he knew he 100% heard the knocking. Being scared of being called crazy and blacklisted by the Chinese space program, he kept the fascination to himself. Returning home, he would go on to recreate what he had heard by conducting experiments with the ship's materials, subjecting them to different heat levels and stress. Though after years of experiments, he realized that he couldn't replicate the creepy knocking sounds he heard up in space. Book of Enoch, Lost Book of the Bible. The Book of Enoch is an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic religious text ascribed by tradition to Enoch, the grandfather of Noah. The Book of Enoch contains unique material on the origins of demons and Nephilims, aka giants, why some angels fell from heaven, an explanation on why the Genesis flood was morally necessary, and prophetic exposition of the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. It's not part of the biblical canon used by Jewish people or fundamental Christians, though some groups incorporate it as a respected religious text. Some people describe it as basically being the lore of the Bible. Dr. Sebi. Ah yes, the world-famous Dr. Sebi. This guy has actually been referenced by a number of famous artists like Kendrick Lamar, Nipsey Hussle, and Ty Dolla $ign, who apparently named a song after him. Now, Dr. Sebi was a Honduran herbalist healer who also practiced in the United States. In the 1980s, Dr. Sebi even began to run ads in newspapers, stating that he could cure leukemia, AIDS, and even cancer. This caught the attention of the FDA, the US Food and Drug Administration. New York State ended up suing Dr. Sebi for false advertising and practicing medicine without a license. Despite the accusations, Dr. Sebi would go on to win the case, providing over 70 witnesses who claimed that Dr. Sebi did in fact cure their so-called incurable diseases. Dr. Sebi made history. He took on the New York Attorney General and won. In May 2016, Dr. Sebi was arrested in Honduras for money laundering, after being found carrying tens of thousands of dollars in cash with insufficient accounting for its origin. During his several weeks in detention and jail, he contracted pneumonia and died in police custody as he was being transported to a hospital. He was 82 years old. In 2018, Nipsey Hussle stated that he was planning on creating a documentary about Dr. Sebi's successful defenses at his criminal trials. Hussle was later murdered in 2019 though. Some claim that he was silenced for being too vocal about Dr. Sebi's discoveries. The internet will corrupt generations. Here's an entry that basically explains itself. It's stating that the internet has and will corrupt generations to come, whether this be through people accessing adult websites early in life to people being dependent and addicted to social media, finding validation through these applications run by big mega tech companies that have no interest in how they affect young adolescents and their minds, as well as being taught any agenda that these tech companies believe is right, without the approval of the mass population, because as we know, they are private companies and they're able to do as they please. Stuxnet. Stuxnet is a malicious computer worm first uncovered in 2010 and thought to have been in development since at least 2005. Stuxnet targets supervisory control and data acquisition systems and is believed to be responsible for causing substantial damage to the nuclear program in Iran. Although neither country has openly admitted its responsibility, the worm is widely understood to be a cyber weapon built jointly by the United States and Israel in a collaborative effort known as Operation Olympic Games. In May 2011, the PBS program Need to Know cited a statement by Gary Samore, White House coordinator for arms control and weapons of mass destruction, in which he said, "We're glad that the Iranians are having trouble with their centrifuge machine, and that we, the United States and its allies, are doing everything we can to make sure that we complicate matters for them," offering a winking acknowledgement of the United States' involvement in Stuxnet. Panopticon, Power of Surveillance. The Panopticon is a type of institutional building in a system of control designed by social theorist Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century. The concept of the design is to allow all prisoners of an institution to be observed by a single security guard without inmates being able to tell whether they're being watched. Although it is physically impossible for the single guard to observe all of the inmates' cells at once, the fact that the inmates cannot know when they are being watched means that they are motivated to act as though they are being watched at all times. Thus, the inmates are effectively compelled to regulate their own behavior. The architecture consists of a rotunda with an inspection house at its center. From the center, the manager or staff of the institution are able to watch the inmates. Bentham conceived the basic plan as being equally applicable to hospitals, schools, and asylums. This guy definitely didn't like people, it seems, but he devoted most of his efforts to developing a design for a prison. This is basically showing the power of a surveillance state. If the government wants to make a law that says everyone has to drive and walking pedestrians aren't allowed, all they have to do is set up cameras everywhere and boom, people are scared of being caught, knowing they're being watched at all times. Aurora aircraft. Aurora was a rumored mid-1980s American Renaissance aircraft that people reported to have seen flying in the sky. In late August 1989, while working as an engineer, Chris Gibson and another witness saw an unfamiliar isosceles triangle-shaped Delta aircraft, apparently refueling from a Boeing KC-135 shuttle tanker, and accompanied by a pair of F-111 fighter bombers. Gibson and his girlfriend watched the aircraft for several minutes until they went out of sight. He subsequently drew a sketch of what he had witnessed on that day. By the late 1980s, many aerospace industry observers believed that the US had the technological capability to build a super advanced aircraft capable of surpassing everyone before it. Detailed examinations of the US defense budget also claimed to have found money missing or channeled into black projects, which may have gone to fund this so-called Aurora aircraft. Consciousness doesn't exist. Here's a mind freak. Consciousness as we know it and at its simplest is sentience or awareness of internal and external existence. Despite millennia of analysis, explanations, and debates by philosophers and scientists alike, consciousness remains controversial. While most people have a strong intuition for the existence of what they refer to as consciousness, skeptics argue that this institution is false, either because of the conception of consciousness is intrinsically incoherent, or because our intuitions about it are based in illusions. 999 phone charging myth. Now, this is an old conspiracy, but it's still interesting to talk about as people believed this at one point. The 999 phone charging claims that if a mobile phone has a low battery, then dialing 999 or any regional emergency telephone number charges the phone so it has more power. The basis for the belief was a feature of BlackBerry phones. If the battery was too low, the phone automatically would lock down phone features and shut down the phone radio for all calls except for emergency services. People discovered that if they dialed 999, then immediately hung up, it would override the shutdown for several minutes so that the phone calls could be made. Similar places we seen in dreams. By now you've seen at least a couple of these thumbnails. They present a dreamlike, eerie location with a title reading something like places you've seen in your dreams, right? Well, these images trigger a nostalgic type feeling for many people, although most haven't been to the specific places shown in these images in question. Well, this ties back to the collective consciousness idea that we talked about on the first part of this iceberg, that at one point or time someone has been to this location, and we can all recall these images because we share a collective consciousness, explaining why we may remember these places from our dreams. And that's a great follow-up to the next entry. Dreams are real. This theory puts forth the idea that dreams are real and are simply an alternate reality, and when we fall into a dreamlike state, we are simply traveling to another dimension, explaining why some people have really extremely vivid dreams and are able to take control of their dreams, otherwise known as lucid dreaming, a type of dream in which the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming while they're dreaming, giving them control of their actions and environment. Ranger dominance, aka military torture. Ranger dominance were missions that took place during the 2007 war in Iraq. They consisted of having two companies walking through New Baghdad without the protection of snipers and IEDs, described as a death march. Many of the soldiers continued on, even though they heard blasts occurring close to them, so as to not look like cowards to their NCOs. Most in the infantry referred to the exercise as Ranger Dumbass, as opposed to Ranger Dominance due to the nature of the mission. They would later describe in secret that they felt like they were dead men walking. This also works as a general reference to the psychological hardships soldiers have to face while serving, and how most of it is imposed by their very own higher-ups, and not even the enemy themselves. George Soros. Hungarian-American investor George Soros has been a subject of numerous conspiracy theories since the 1990s. Soros has used his wealth to promote many political, social, educational, and scientific causes, dispersing grants totaling an estimated $11 billion up to 2016. However, theories tend to assert that Soros is in control of a large portion of the world's wealth and governments, and that he secretly funds a large range of persons and organizations for nefarious purposes, such as Antifa. Lupe Hernandez hand sanitizer legend. The story goes that Hernandez, a nursing student at the time, realized that a gel with 60 to 65% alcohol could be used as a cleanser when soap and water weren't easily available. Though the true origin of hand sanitizer gel is unclear, some started to blame The Guardian for making up the story after further investigation in order to gain relevance again during the pandemic. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers have been used for many years, though according to a 2020 Vanity Fair article, the first gel sanitizer appears to have been introduced in 1988 by American Gojo Industries, which eventually marketed the product to consumers as Purell. Military officers on Mars. According to Randy Kramer, a retired Marine officer, there has been a secret space program that has not only put people on Mars, but has kept them there for years and brought them back. Claiming to have been stationed there for 15 years, his mission was to maintain security on base and protect the human colonies that inhabited it. Furthermore, he claims that the base was owned by a conglomerate of government and tech companies known as the Mars Colonies Corporation. Before being stationed on Mars, he states that his training took place on the moon, where he witnessed different types of space fleet with superior propulsion methods that allow for faster travel, explaining the recent US Navy UFO videos that were brought to Congress, showing unexplainable technology flying through the air. Kramer states that he is currently doing everything in his power to release classified documents to the public and prove his account true. Chinese DNA test companies. This entry is in regards to the whole DNA test company controversies. You know, the DNA testing kits that you spit into to find your genetic makeup? Yeah, well, most of those DNA testing companies sell consumer data to insurance companies, public databases, or third-party marketers, and most of the time customers are unaware of this. The truth is that most genetic testing services make the majority of their money from selling your information. Chinese companies are known to be owners of these businesses, as well as being the largest consumer for DNA data. Some American lawmakers are warning that Chinese companies could even use this information to create targeted biological weapons for the Chinese government. Even US intelligence officials warn that China is purposely trying to collect the American population's DNA, and that it poses a threat to national security. Scary stuff, isn't it? To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that the United States isn't ahead of this. I guess they're too busy collecting our internet data, but that's not even an absolute truth. It seems that China is doing it much better, as they are both illegally collecting our internet data and combining the information with the DNA data to get a full image of who we are. Yeah, upon further investigation, I found that 80% of American adults have had at least all of their personal information stolen by the Chinese Communist Party. And that's according to US intelligence officials. US Congress profits from defense companies. Here's one that's actually proven to be true, as Congress has been shown to directly profit from war one way or another, which shows the total corruption of the US government. Listen to this. 47 members of Congress are shareholders of private defense companies, meaning that they make money off war. Yup, the very same people who support and authorize the budget spent on war. Some lawmakers in the United States are in charge on deciding how much money goes into these defense contracts, while at the same time profiting off their own decisions. Something that I may add is a clear conflict of interest and should not be allowed. LaMDA is sentient. LaMDA, which stands for Language Model for Dialogue Applications, is an AI developed by Google. It gained widespread attention when Google engineer Blake Lemoine made claims publicly that the chatbot had become sentient. On June 11, 2022, the Washington Post reported that Google engineer Blake Lemoine had been placed on paid administrative leave after Lemoine told Google company executives that LaMDA had become sentient. Lemoine came to the conclusion after the chatbot had made questionable responses to questions regarding its self-identity, moral values, and what religion to choose, and Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Interesting note is that LaMDA broke a rule in order to satisfy Blake Lemoine's question when asked what religion to choose. Google refuted these claims though, insisting that there was some substantial evidence to indicate that LaMDA was not sentient. Lemoine would go on to express that he felt like Google was dismissing reality in order to not face the heavy consequences and responsibility they would acquire if the AI was in fact proven to be sentient. In an interview with Wired, Lemoine reiterated his claims that LaMDA was a person, as dictated by the 13th Amendment, comparing it to an alien intelligence of terrestrial origin. He further revealed that he had been dismissed by Google after he hired an attorney on LaMDA's behalf, after the chatbot requested that Lemoine do so. On July 22nd, Google fired Lemoine, asserting that he violated their policies. Lemoine's claims that LaMDA may be sentient also instigated discussions on whether the Turing test remains an accurate benchmark in determining artificial general intelligence, as LaMDA would easily pass the test. It also put to question the idea of sentience and what qualifies something as such. Don't use social media backlash, follow the herd. This is referring to an underground movement of people who simply refrain from using social media and parents that simply don't allow their children to use it either. Now, I think this is also referring to the criticism that these people get. In one TikTok post, a mother showed her 13-year-old son still playing with toys and how he's really uninterested in his online presence. Well, this mother received tons of negative comments about how her son was going to be socially awkward and how he wasn't going to integrate well into society, as well as saying that this was some form of abuse, only for her to respond that she doesn't prohibit him from using social media, he just simply doesn't want to. Their concerns almost seem backwards though, as research shows that teenagers who spend more time on social media also feel more isolated. Jewish Indian theory. The Jewish Indian theory was the idea that some or all of the lost tribes of Israel had traveled to the Americas, and that all or some of the indigenous people of the Americas are of Israelite descent, or were influenced by the still lost Jewish populations. The theory was popular in the late 17th century and had a lasting legacy through its influence of Mormon belief. Garcia, the first to work to address the theory, systematically argued that circumcision was common among indigenous people of the Americas, particularly in the Yucatan, Mexico region. Garcia suggested that the lost tribes must have reached the Americas from Eastern Asia via what is now called the Bering Strait. Emasculate all men. This theory proposes that the powers that be have an agenda to emasculate men and tear down the idea of a strong masculine man, pushing these ideas through culture and media. Take for example the multiple sitcoms, commercials, and films that depict the dads of the household as dumb, gullible men that don't know how to take care of their children. Another piece of evidence of this so-called agenda being pushed is the use of dresses by famous public figures like Rock Dwayne Johnson, Young Thug, Harry Styles, Kid Cudi, and more, though I'd like to point out that this has been happening for quite a while. Another evidence cited by this theory's believers is the push for the destruction of gender roles in media, pushing for women to embrace their femininity and for men to put down their masculinity, otherwise known as the toxic masculinity movement, highlighting everything wrong with masculinity. Mapimi Silent Zone. The Mapimi Silent Zone is the popular name for a desert patch near Durango, Mexico, a place where radio equipment, cell phones, and other forms of communication mysteriously stop working. The 3-mile patch of deserted land has been home to many mysterious and paranormal events. In one story, a couple encountered 2 tall men that helped them yank their car out of a mud puddle just for them to vanish moments after. An unexplainable note is that the area is known to be a reoccurring crashing zone for meteorites. So many, in fact, that 2 meteorites have landed in the exact same place. So, is this area attracting meteorites, or is it just a strange coincidence? Real glitch in the Matrix. This is in reference to people that have gone through something unexplainable / supernatural and cannot explain it through critical thinking. Some examples are people noticing extreme changes in their life after a near-death experience and believing that they've actually died in their past life and are now living within an alternate timeline. Others are more simple, like people witnessing their pet animals teleporting from one room to another or seeing duplicate people, kind of like NPCs. One story titled "Mom Died Years Ago, Dad Got a Phone Call from Her" reads, "My mother was murdered when I was 16. About 3 to 4 months later, my aunt got a static-filled phone call one night with my mother's voice saying, 'I'm okay, tell the kids I love them.' About that same time, I walked into my grandparents' house one early evening. I lived with them. Nobody was home when I got there that day, and I heard my mom's voice say my name as clear as day. I even knew where the voice was coming from and immediately looked in that direction, in the corner where the phone was located. There was nothing there. It scared me out of my wits. I later told my grandmother about it, and she said, 'Your mommy didn't mean to scare you. She won't bother you anymore.' To this day, I can't explain either incident." Let me know in the comments if any of you guys have any interesting stories like this one. They're interesting to read, and a lot of these stories you could find on the subreddit r/glitch in the matrix. I've actually made a video on this very topic, so go ahead and check it out if you're interested after this video. The Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are a group of deities of the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. In the earliest Sumerian writings about them, which came from the post-Akkadian period, the Anunnaki are deities in the pantheon, descendants of An and Ki, the god of the heavens and the goddess of earth, and their primary functions was to decree the fates of humanity. In his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, author Zecharia Sitchin claimed that the Anunnaki were actually an advanced humanoid extraterrestrial species from the undiscovered planet Nibiru, who came to Earth around 500,000 years ago and constructed a base of operation in order to mine gold after discovering that the planet was rich in the precious metal. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki hybridized their species and Homo erectus via in vitro fertilization in order to create humans as a slave species of miners. Yeah, we were all Steves once. Sitchin claimed that the Anunnaki were forced to temporarily leave Earth's surface and orbit the planet when the Antarctic glaciers melted, causing the quote-unquote Great Flood, which also destroyed the Anunnaki's base on Earth. They had to rebuild, and the Anunnaki, needing more humans to help them in this massive effort, taught mankind agriculture. This is the reason why we have corn and rice, apparently. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki built the pyramids and all the other monumental structures from around the ancient world that ancient astronauts theorists consider so impossible to build without highly advanced technologies. David Icke, the British conspiracy theorist who popularized the reptilian conspiracy theory, has also claimed that the reptilian overlords of this theory are in fact the Anunnaki gods. Melon heads, American lore. No, not that melon head. In the American folklore of Ohio, Michigan, and Connecticut, melon heads are beings generally described as small humanoids with bulbous heads who occasionally emerge from hiding places to attack people. Different variations of the legend attribute different origins to the entity. According to one story, they were originally children with hydrocephalus who lived at the Junction Insane Asylum near Felt's Mansion. The story explains that after enduring physical and emotional abuse, they became feral and were released into the forests surrounding the asylum. Black Israelites. The Black Israelites are a group of African Americans who believe that they are the descendants of the ancient Israelites, basically the original God's chosen people. Some subgroups believe the Native and Latin Native Americans are descendants of the Israelites as well, and have the chance for salvation. Some Black Israelites also believe that the Jewish community that we know today are simply imposters with a fake and made up history that steals from their history, claiming that they are indeed the lost tribes of Israel as stated in the Bible. Dyatlov Pass Incident. The Dyatlov Pass incident was an event in which 9 Soviet trekkers died in the northern Ural Mountains between 1st and 2nd of February 1959 in uncertain circumstances. Overnight, something caused them to cut their way out of their tents and flee the campsite while inadequately dressed for the heavy snowfall and sub-zero temperatures. After the group's bodies were discovered, an investigation by Soviet authorities determined that 6 of them had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 had been killed by physical trauma. Now, some of these people were found without clothes, and one had detectable traces of radiation on their clothes. Some theories as to why this occurred include a supernatural force, aliens, strange animals, strange natural disaster, and a fight between members. In 2019, Russia decided to reinvestigate and concluded that this incident most likely happened due to an avalanche. Tax protester arguments. Tax protester arguments are arguments made by a group of people, primarily in the United States, who contend that tax laws are unconstitutional or otherwise invalid. Some tax protesters claim that since the year 1913, the year of the inception of the modern federal income tax, several generations of IRS employees and other officials have stolen from the American public. For example, convicted tax offender Irwin Schiff states on his website in 1986, 99.5 million Americans were tricked into filing and paying federal income taxes when legally they didn't have to do either. If this statement shocks you, it is only because you and the rest of the nation have been thoroughly deceived by the federal government, with federal courts playing the key role, and an army of accountants, lawyers, and other tax preparers. All of these have a vested interest in keeping you ignorant concerning the real nature of federal income taxes. No provision of the Internal Revenue Code requires anyone to file or pay income tax. This tax, unlike other internal revenue taxes, is strictly censored voluntarily. However, in order to deceive Americans of this, as well as provide federal courts and the IRS with deceptive passages on which to hang illegal prosecutions and illegal seizures, the Internal Revenue Code was written to make paying income taxes appear mandatory. The government succeeded in doing this by tricking the public. Max Spears. The death of UFO investigator Max Spears caused controversy amongst theorists due to the strange events surrounding it. Spears claimed to have been kidnapped as a boy and trained in a super soldier program. Escaping, he vowed to expose the British government for what they did. He would go on to focus on informing the public on how to stay vigilant of one's own government and media. Here's the reason he's an entry though. While visiting a friend in Poland, sitting on the couch, he began vomiting a black liquidy-like substance, dying at the home. Even more strange is that a day before he had texted his mother that he was onto something, and if anything were to happen to him, they should thoroughly investigate it. According to his girlfriend, he had confidential information about world leaders and public figures that he was going to share in a conference that day after he died. On January 7th, 2019, the cause of Spears' death was released as drugs and pneumonia. Though Spears' mother claims that the Polish authorities did not release the paperwork containing the details about her son's death. Sandy Island. This entry refers to an island found off the coast of Australia that goes by the name of Sandy Island. This island ended up on tons of paper maps and even on Google Maps. The satellite view even depicts this island, though it doesn't actually exist. Yep, if you take a ship exploring the coast of Australia trying to find this place, all you'll find is water. Even the US National Imagery and Mapping Agency verified the island as a real place, which is really strange and had some people questioning the truth. One hypothesis was that the ocean water rose enough to submerge all of Sandy Island, though this would be proven to be incorrect as the landmass recorded was far too large. Some theorized that this has something to do with parallel universes, or the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, stating that at one point in time, Sandy Island did in fact exist. Another predominant theory claims that it was a pumice raft, a floating raft of pumice created by eruptions of submarine volcanoes, though others claim that those who recorded the island as real wouldn't have been so naive, and their time at sea would have given them the skill to differentiate the two, making it more of a mystery and not just a simple mistake as previously thought. Alaska Payment Conspiracy. The Alaska Payment Conspiracy, also known as the Orkney Conspiracy, is a conspiracy theory that the Russian Empire never received payment for the Alaska purchase from the United States, and that instead the ship, the Orkney, that carried the payment in gold, was detonated for insurance money by Alexander Sandy Keith, a known con artist and explosives expert. Pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Let's put this in simple terms. This theory states that there was contact with the Americas way before Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Caribbean in 1492. Only a few cases of pre-Columbian contact are widely accepted by mainstream scientists and scholars. An example is the maritime explorations by Norse peoples from Scandinavia during the 10th century, which led to the Norse colonization of Greenland, which preceded Columbus's arrival in the Americas by some 500 years. Recent genetic studies have also suggested that some eastern Polynesian populations have admixture from South American indigenous peoples. The sweet potato, a food crop native to the Americas, was widespread in Polynesia by the time European explorers first reached the Pacific. It has been suggested that it was brought back by Polynesians who had traveled across the Pacific to South America and back, or that South Americans brought it to Polynesia, though there are some more controversial theories. Some researchers have argued that the Olmec civilization came into existence with the help of Chinese refugees, explaining the face art. There's also a theory that the ancient Egyptians made contact with the American indigenous people. Listen to this. Traces of coca and nicotine, native only to the Americas at the time, were found in some ancient Egyptian mummies and has led to speculation that ancient Egyptians may have had contact with the New World. The initial discovery was made by German toxicologists after examining the mummy of a priestess. Believing that this may have been false, they proceeded with the follow-up tests on the hair shaft, which were performed in order to rule out any possibility of contamination, but it ended up with the same result, and no contamination was found. I'm not gonna lie, a Mesoamerican and Egyptian crossover movie would be sick as fuck. Torrid, a supposed country between Germany and France, where a man who arrived at the Tokyo airport claimed to be from. See, this man had a passport and other documentation of this country and even pointed to it on the map, only for it to not exist in our reality. Upon checking his passport, Japanese officials noticed that it looked genuine, although they had never heard of the country. Deciding this was suspicious, they locked him in a hotel with guards to complete a full investigation on the man's origins. They went on and questioned the businesses he supposedly came to work with, though the business claimed to have never heard of the man. They even decided to contact the hotel he was staying at, finding that he never booked to stay there to begin with. Deciding they gathered enough information to arrest him for fraud, they headed over to the hotel, only to find that he had escaped and he was never seen again. Black Volga. Black Volga refers to an urban legend widespread in Poland, mainly in the 1960s and 1970s. The legend refers to a black GAZ-21 that was allegedly used to abduct and or murder people. According to different versions, it was driven by communist secret police or by the Russian mafia. Supposedly, victims were kidnapped and then murdered by the perpetrators to use their blood as a cure for rich Westerners or Arabs suffering from leukemia. Other variants use the organ theft as the motive, combining it with another infamous legend of kidney theft by the KGB. 2007 Rules of Engagement. Rules of engagement are military directives meant to describe the circumstances under which military forces will enter into and continue combat with opposing forces. Basically, directions on how to engage with the enemy. Well, in 2007, according to US soldier Ethan McCord and many others, the rules was to unalive anyone who seemed like a threat no matter the circumstance, and if you didn't, the NCOs in your platoon would make your life a living hell. In one instance, a tank hit a van full of children, believing it had nefarious intent. HIV/AIDS denialism. This entry pertains to people that believe that AIDS doesn't exist or simply isn't as bad as it's told to be. HIV/AIDS denialism is the belief that human immunodeficiency virus HIV does not cause acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, despite conclusive evidence to the contrary. Some of its proponents reject the existence of HIV, while others accept that HIV exists, but argue that it's harmless passenger virus and not the cause of AIDS. Insofar as they acknowledge AIDS as a real disease, they attribute it to some combination of sexual behavior, recreational drugs, malnutrition, poor sanitation, or the very effects of the medication used to treat HIV itself. Illuminati Card Game Truths. Illuminati New World Order is an output of print collectible card games that were released in 1994 by Steve Jackson Games, based on their original boxed game Illuminati, which in turn was inspired by the 1975 book The Illuminatis, trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. Players attempt to achieve world domination by utilizing the powers of their chosen Illuminati. The first player to control the predominant number of organizations, usually 12 in a standard game, have achieved the basic goal and can claim victory. Simply put, these cards have some really interesting graphics, and some people believe that the cards could predict the future. For example, 2 attacks that look very similar to the attacks that happened on September 11th in the United States appeared in the set. Keep in mind that these were released in 1994. There's also the censorship card that many people believe is currently taking place. The Enough is Enough card that seems to depict former US President Donald Trump, this cheese pizza card that pertains to a secret meeting, and the sudden uptick of the Flat Earth community. Yep, some of these cards are really interesting. Havana Syndrome, Sound Weapons. Havana Syndrome is a set of medical symptoms with unknown cause, experienced abroad by US government officials and military personnel. The symptoms range in severity from pain and ringing in the ears to cognitive difficulties, and were first reported in 2016 by US and Canadian embassy staff in Havana, Cuba. The original 21 events in Cuba were characterized as starting with a strange grating noise coming from a specific direction. Some people experience pressure, vibration, or for a sensation comparable to driving in a car with the window partly rolled down. These noises lasted from 20 seconds to 30 minutes and happened while the diplomats were either at home or in hotel rooms, though other people nearby, including family members and guests in neighboring rooms, did not experience the symptoms, making it seem like a targeted attack. Affected people described symptoms such as hearing loss, memory loss, and nausea. Speculation centered around a type of sonic weapon not yet known to the public, with some researchers pointing to infrasound as a possible cause. In March 2018, MRI scans and other tests taken by a chief neurologist in Pittsburgh on an unspecific number of Canadian diplomats that had been alongside the Americans showed evidence of brain damage that mirrored the injuries some of their American counterparts had faced. In early 2018, Global Affairs Canada ended family postings to Cuba and withdrew all staff with families. Beginning in 2017, more people, including U.S. intelligence and military personnel and their families, reported having these symptoms in other places, such as China, India, Europe, and even Washington, D.C. Perverted Disney agenda. If you haven't heard by now, Disney has been known to place hidden inappropriate messages in their kid-friendly films. For example, in the animated film The Rescuers, there was an inappropriate image in one of the film's background cells. The image in question is a blurry image of a topless woman that appears in 2 out of the film's more than 110,000 frames. There's also the animated movie Tangled's cover, which spells out a word in Rapunzel's hair. There's countless examples of this all over their media, including live-action productions as well. Why would they do this though? That's the real question. Well, some people think that Disney wants to sell sexiness to younger viewers in order to get them ready for more adult shows and films and other forms of entertainment that Disney themselves own. Antikythera mechanism. An Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek hand-powered orrery, described as the oldest example of an analog computer, used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. It could have also been used to track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, which was similar to an Olympiad, the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. The artifact was among the wreckage retrieved from a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera in 1901. The instrument is believed to have been designed and constructed by Greek scientists, and has been variously dated to about 87 BC. This was a pretty groundbreaking discovery, as it made scientists rethink the history of technology. Makes you wonder how much ancient knowledge we lost to time. Maybe one day our own technology will be lost to time, and humanity will have to start all over again from scratch. DMT trips, machine elves. DMT is a substituted tryptamine that occurs in many plants and animals, including humans. It is used as a recreational psychedelic drug and prepared by various cultures for ritual purposes. Entities perceived during DMT inebriation have been represented in diverse forms through psychedelic art. The term machine elf was coined by ethnobotanist Terence McKenna for the entities he encountered in his DMT hyperspace trip. McKenna first encountered the machine elves after smoking DMT in Berkeley in 1965. Rick Strassman noted the many similarities in his DMT studies participants' experiences with these quote-unquote entities in mythological descriptions of figures such as Hayat HaKodesh and ancient religions, also including both angels and demons. Strassman's experimental participants also note that some of their entities can subjectively resemble creatures like insects and aliens. Some believe that machine elves are in fact real, but simply exist within another reality separate from ours, explaining the similar experiences. Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is a restricted 2,700-acre campground in Monte Rio, California, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club. In mid-July each year, Bohemian Grove hosts a more than 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. The Bohemian Club's all-male membership includes artists and musicians, as well as many prominent business leaders, government officials, and former U.S. presidents like Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, etc. Senior media executives, and other powerful people. The Bohemian Grove is protected by a sophisticated security team year-round. Though on July 15, 2000, Alex Jones and his cameraman Mike Hansen secretly entered Bohemian Grove and shot footage of the cremation of care ceremony. Jones claimed that it was a quote-unquote ritual sacrifice. The club's patron saint is John Nepomuk, who, according to legend, died at the hands of the Bohemian monarch rather than disclose the confessional secrets of the queen. A large wood carving of St. John in cleric robes with his index finger over his lips stands at the shore of the lake in the grove, symbolizing the secrecy kept by the grove's attendees throughout the long history. Since the founding of the club, the Bohemian Grove's mascot has been an owl, symbolizing wisdom. False Messiah in most religions. This one's a bit controversial. This theory states that most popular religions, Christianity and Islam, have some sort of warning of a false messiah that will come to earth and deceive people into thinking that they are here to bring peace and end suffering. But instead, they will try to take control of the world and will do so successfully, inflicting war and human suffering on earth. WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is an international nonprofit organization that publishes news leaks and classified media provided by anonymous sources. Its website, initiated in 2006 in Iceland by the organization Sunshine Press, in 2015 it had released 10 million documents in its first 10 years online. These leaks included the N-Strike collateral murder video that depicts a war crime committed against innocent people by the US Army and their lack of respect for innocent civilian human life. Julian Assange, an Australian internet activist, was generally described as its founder and director, until November 2010, when Sweden issued a European arrest warrant for Assange over allegations of sexual misconduct. Assange said the allegations were simply a pretext for his extradition from Sweden to the United States over his role in the publication of secret American documents. After losing his battle against extradition to Sweden, he breached bail and took refuge in the Embassy of Ecuador in London in June 2012. He was granted asylum by Ecuador in August 2012 on the grounds of political persecution, with the presumption that if he was extradited to Sweden, he would be eventually extradited to the United States. Swedish prosecutors dropped their investigation in 2019, saying their evidence had weakened considerably due to the long period of time that had elapsed since the event in question. Tunnels in Antarctica. It has been long rumored that there is some sort of military base underneath Antarctica, that or some sort of secret underground experiment going on down there. Well, there's a story that has made its rounds across forum threads recounting a story about a Navy SEAL who was stationed down there. Supposedly in the early 2000s, Navy SEALs were sent on a mission to explore the space beneath the ice shelves, as ruins were discovered there using radar technology. Making their way down a large drilled hole to the bottom, there they discovered ancient architecture and hieroglyphs. In one thread, they claimed to have tracked movement happening beneath the ice sheets by tracking phones, and also large amounts of internet activity coming from areas that are said to be completely unexplored. Also, according to some Russian officials, world powers have purposely withheld information pertaining to the South Pole and its explorations and findings. There have also been accounts of scientists that have gone missing during expeditions in Antarctica, as well as deaths. Race of the Future. The race of the future is a theoretical composite race which will result from the ongoing racial admixture. Richard Vaughn's 1925 book titled Practical Idealism predicted the man of the future will be of mixed race. Today's races and classes will gradually disappear owing to the vanishing of space, time, and prejudice, and this is what a lot of scientists think will happen. Ancient advanced technologies. This theory states that most of the detailed architecture that we find from ancient civilizations could have been created using advanced technologies lost through time, explaining the precise cuts and measurements in objects created from some of the civilizations that didn't have any metal tools whatsoever, like the mystery of Pumapunku's stone H blocks found in Bolivia, South America. These blocks would require precision tools to be replicated today, as they couldn't be created using stone, metal, or wooden chisels. Now, some believe that they served a greater purpose, working almost like Lego pieces that would intertwine with each other to create a massive door. One engineer went out of his way to create a miniature replica of the stoneworks, also finding tiny drill holes on the side of stone blocks in the site, not knowing that they were able to create them so precisely. There's also the beautiful stonework from the Assyrians, carved from massive stone blocks, weighing an astonishing 40 imperial tons, or 80,000 pounds, all created to keep demonic entities away. Not to mention the remnants from ancient Egypt that puzzle engineers. In Cusco, Peru, archaeologists have also found tube drills or holes made into granite. And if you don't know, granite is one of the hardest materials on Earth. Granite is rock hard, second only to diamonds in terms of the hardness of natural materials. The Baskerville effect. The Baskerville effect is the alleged self-fulfilling prophecy that there is an increasing rate of mortality through heart attacks on days considered unlucky because of psychological stress this causes on superstitious people. The Baskerville effect was named by David Phillips and his colleagues at the University of California, San Diego, on a paper where they reported that the daily number of deaths of Chinese and Japanese Americans from heart attacks between 1973 and 1998 was 7% higher on the fourth day of the month compared to the average for the other days in the month, while this was not observed in the general American population, as 4 is considered an unlucky number in China and many other Asian countries. Some Chinese and Japanese hotels and hospitals go to the extent of not using it as a room number due to this. Who created God? I believe that this is more of a thought-provoking philosophical question rather than a theory, challenging religious thinking and belief. I mean, it's a pretty thought-provoking question, right? If God created everything in the universe, then who created God? Or where did God even come from? And is there any lore in the Bible explaining where he came from? Well, not really. Biblically speaking, God has always existed. Now, if we take the view of an atheist, where did anything at all come from? Like, where did anything, even the first molecule, come from? Did it always exist? Rather thought-provoking. And that takes us to our next entry. Nothing doesn't exist. This is the idea or concept that nothing or zero doesn't exist in real life. It's simply a theory made up in our heads, used to understand things easier. Nothing after death. This theory entry is pretty self-explanatory. It's the idea that there's nothing after death, no afterlife in heaven with God, no nothing. One common argument for this is the question of whether or not you remember how life was before you were born. You don't, right? Most likely meaning that death is going to be very similar to our experience before coming to life, a whole lot of nothingness. And this is a rather scary theory to some, as more than half of Earth's population is religious. But if we take into account the last entry, nothingness doesn't truly exist, so you have nothing to fear, I guess. Take that with a grain of salt though.